Good afternoon, everyone. Although I got to tell you, coming right after Mike Bloomberg, PS22, and Al Roker is a tough act to follow. But it is wonderful to see so many folks here from the service community. A special thanks to the National Corporation and all of you who day in and day out make so much difference in so many lives of countless millions of Americans. Now, we had that upbeat presentation from the mayor. I have to come afterwards and add maybe a few challenges as well, that while we celebrate the amazing growth of this movement over the last 20 years, a movement that I've been proud to be part of, both in my private sector and in public sector, we also have to recognize that we're going to be asking more of you, sometimes with even less public resources, in the months and years ahead. So how we get it right, how we make sure that this national service movement grows and expands, is something that we all have to find ways to work together on. It's one of the reasons why I was so proud that when Congress this past year, in one of its rare bipartisan efforts, actually passed the Serve America Act, I was proud to author a provision of that act that would create within the expanded AmeriCorps efforts a Veterans Corps. It is terribly important in this country that we make sure that we re-engage the almost 2 million men and women who've served in Iraq and Afghanistan, those people who've stepped up, put themselves in harm's way to serve our country. We need to make sure they have a role in serving our country when they return as well. Part of Veteran Corps as well will make sure that we provide additional assistance to all those countless veteran service organizations that takes care not only of returning veterans, but also of the veterans' families while their loved ones are away in harm's way. But I also want to ask you for a couple of other challenges. You see, before I was involved in politics, I was very involved in this movement in Virginia and in the Washington, D.C. area. And the challenges I think we all face who want to make sure that we provide that service is we've got to recognize that as more is asked, we rethink the whole notion of not-for-profit, of delivery of service. So let me leave you with 3 challenges and then one final point of an activity that I'll be engaged in working with you on. First is, and I know this conference is focusing on this issue, we must continue to build institutional capacity within our organizations. Too many of our nonprofits rightfully spend every last drop of effort and dollar on slightly expanding programs rather than trying to build up the internal capacity of your organizations. We can do much more effectiveness if we grow institutional capacity within our organizations as well as simply expand outreach efforts. Second, those of you, many of you here I know are executive directors of organizations from around the country, but there are probably many here that are board members as well. We will need more from nonprofit boards in the coming years and months than anything that they've been asked to do in the past. Too often our board members are willing to perhaps write that check or support your particular organization, but they're not willing to engage with public officials. They're not willing to add that extra capacity that they can add to furthering the goals of your organization. We're going to need to re-examine the role of board members for nonprofits in a thoughtful and more productive way going forward. Third, you know, I live in Washington, or I live outside of Washington, but I work in Washington where things have gotten to be fairly partisan recently. But I got to tell you, it's often easier to have Democrats and Republicans work together than it is to get institutional funders to work together in the nonprofit sector. So all of our wonderful not-for-profit funders, foundation funders, corporate funders, we're going to need a new engagement level. We're going to need a new willingness to cooperate. We're going to need a new understanding that simply because it was not invented here doesn't mean that we can't take great programs and bring them to scale. And part of that as well is going to mean and I know this may not be the politically correct point or place to say it, that not every nonprofit that may have existed 20, 30, 40 years ago will be able to make it. We're going to have to look at how we marshal our resources, leverage our resources. We're going to have to think about mergers and acquisitions within the nonprofit sector as well to make sure that we get the most effective programs, the best service delivery programs to the most Americans in need. And part of that effort, and one of the reasons why I'm here, is I've been proud to be asked by the corporation to be part of a new effort, and you're going to hear from some of our corporate partners in a moment, called $1 Billion and Change. This is an effort to try to enlist corporate America in over $1 billion of either direct resources or pro bono services to the service industry. We are already halfway there. Almost $500 million has been committed. I look forward to working with you all across this country to make sure that we get to that $1 billion figure over a 3-year time frame so that American business can once again stand tall in making sure that this wonderful service movement touches all of those Americans in need. So for what you do day in and day out, oftentimes not within the glamour of Radio City Music Hall, but for what you do to make sure every American's life is a little bit better, I say thank you. I look forward to making sure that in the coming weeks, months, and years, we make sure that this service movement touches all those in need. Thank you, God bless you, and let's make it happen.